back. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Physiology and Philosophy podcast. On today's episode, I want to discuss some rather difficult topics, and those are related to mortality and grief. And I wasn't necessarily planning on jumping into this topic so early, but a friend of mine, a very close friend, recently just notified me that one of his close friends had passed away, and it's sort of brought to the surface some feelings that of grief that I've went through, and I'm sure everyone who's listening to this has gone through their own version of losing someone. And ultimately sort of what drove me to even record this is the fact that that's not a process that anyone should have to go through alone or feel like that they can't talk about with other people, and any resource that can help deal with that in a healthy manner is one that I'm happy to be a part of. And I think grief is something that is well studied and documented, and there's obviously phases and trained professionals who can help people sort of navigate these phases in a healthy manner. And I almost view that as the immediate acute response to losing someone, and that's not what I'm going to remotely touch on, just because that's not what I'm trained to do, but rather I'm just going to talk about some of my own experiences and some of the practices and lessons that I've learned throughout, and ways I try to sort of build them into my daily life. And I think personally, from the acute response, I've like many lost probably a couple of people in the last 5 to 7 years who were very close to me, and very unexpectedly, some friends and some family. And in the immediate acute shock, what comes clear to me is there's sort of this immediate realization of what matters in life and what doesn't. And it's such a clear representation of how much energy you put into things that truly don't matter. When you lose someone that's so close to you and that means so much to you, suddenly everything else that you were preoccupied with, that you were worried about, that you were stressing over, it seems to just completely diminish in its magnitude. And obviously it's because you just had an immediate traumatic event, but it also just goes to show you how much negative or even anxious thoughts you can carry with you without even knowing. And in the acute response, where is the nice part of it is when you are with your family and when you're with your friends and you're able to sort of keep those previous negative, anxious feelings at bay, and you're just mourning together, and you're hugging, and you're telling everyone you love them and you appreciate them. It's kind of this, you're going through it together if you're fortunate enough to have a support group like that, and you're not alone. And it reinforces the notion of what matters. And obviously everyone is going to have a different response here, and everyone's going to ultimately have to go through this journey in their own way. But one of the things that stood out to me when I lost someone very close is that most of the things you worry about are truly meaningless in the sense of what matters. And it reinforces what does matter. And more often than not, it is simply friends, family, and close relationships. And in a weird way, the first person who I lost that was very close to me, it was obviously traumatic. And I know this might sound weird in a way, but the 6 months after that was probably some of the lowest anxiety that I've had, just because the threshold of what it took for something to even become relevant in the sense of, is this worth worrying about, became a lot higher than it used to be, because I just had this perspective of what matters and the fact that life is fragile and I'm alive. And it was sort of a different way of being when you're not oh, suddenly, when that threshold of anxiety provoking thoughts is just a lot lower. Things weren't bothering me. I let things go, and I was generally kinder and nicer to people. And for the entire community that went through that grief together, we all became tighter because of it. And especially in my close guy friends, we used to just say, all right, goodbye, I'll see you later, and maybe give knuckles. But then since then, it's been, I love you, and we hug. And there's, that has fortunately been one of the things that has stuck with me. And I think the community at large is just letting people, you love them, and then not letting these other things have as much weight on your psyche as they have in the past. But unfortunately, it doesn't represent the magnitude of the loss. But after that 6-month period, things started to pop up again. And it was a practice that I tried to sort of reintegrate, and just having this awareness of what matters and what doesn't. But life goes on in a way, and sometimes you're going to sort of fall back into the old grooves that was anxiety provoking. And this is when, unfortunately, you lose someone else, and then you're brought back to this space. And then that's when I had the awareness of, why does it have to take such a traumatic event to realize what matters in life and what doesn't? Why do I have to lose someone that means so much for me to stop worrying about things that don't matter? And that's where I started to really seek out practices that could, help me lower the threshold of living a calm, peaceful life, and raise the threshold of things that would need to happen to me before I would worry about it. And one of the main things is starting the day with just the awareness of, hey, I'm alive, and I know life is fragile. And this is in a moment where I like to think about some of the people I've lost as well, and just in a warm way, and just sort of think about the good times, because I like to carry them with me throughout my journey. But just the awareness in the morning of, before your mind has the opportunity to start worrying about something, it's about worrying about a project or a work or a text or an email, you just say, hey, I'm alive, and I have the opportunity to go attack this day, and I'm going to enjoy every part of it. And this is where there's 2 specific practices that I've tried to adopt into my life that come from Stoic philosophy. And at the time that this episode's released, I'm not sure if the Stoic episode is going to come before or after it, but I highly recommend checking out anything by Ryan Holiday on Stoicism, as well as William B. Irvine, who has a book called The Guide to the Good Life. And one of the main tenets or practices in Stoicism is this notion called memento mori, which means remember you are mortal. And I actually bought one of the coins that Ryan was selling on the Daily Stoic, and it says that. And it's just a subtle reminder for me to say, hey, like, before you even think about worrying about something that doesn't matter, just remember that today could be the last day, and that life is fragile and it's never certain. So when you hold that awareness, it can be tricky. Sometimes it may not have the weight and you might be stressing. And for some people, when they hear that, if you tell them, hey, today could be the last day, it's a difficult pill to swallow and see it from the right perspective. But there's truly a way where you can view this concept and it can be beautiful, because instead of just leaving and getting stressed out, if you think about this in the morning, you're going to hug your loved ones really tight before you leave. And when you go to work and something annoys you, you're going to say, hey, like, it's okay. And I see you, and we're going to get through this together. And it's a process, and I'm not going to get overwhelmed, because life is inherently beautiful, and I'm here, and there's people who are really close to me who unfortunately are not here anymore, and I owe it to them to be the best version of myself, so I can ultimately be the best version of myself to have a positive impact on other people. So if you can hold the awareness of life is fragile, nothing's promised, then I think it does two things. One, you're not going to worry about things so much. You're going to let things slide. And two, I think it's going to strengthen the quality of your relationships. If you are taking someone for granted, or if you have someone in your life who maybe it's someone who you love and you care about, but you just don't talk as often as you used to, because relationships take work and they're difficult, reach out to them and just let people know you love them. And the more you do that, I think the more love you'll have in your own life. And when people can feel that coming from you, it's a great two-way street to be on. So if memento mori is one practice, you could say, that sort of goes along this whole concept of mortality and grief. Another one from the Stoic practice, and this one I really adopted from, not even adopted, I didn't do anything to this. This is the Stoics and William B. Irvine. He really outlined this in his book called Negative Visualization. And it can be applied in a similar manner as memento mori, but the essence of this is kind of what I was saying in the beginning of why does something bad have to happen before you realize what matters in your life? And this is kind of hacking your own brain, and it's challenging, but the essence of the practice is you sit down and you think about either something generally bad happen, or you think about someone who you care a lot about, and you think about something bad happening. And I think to truly maximize this practice, you have to visualize it. You have to visualize the event, and you have to visualize how you would feel, and you'd have to visualize what it would be like in the extreme event that it's not an injury, but a fatality, of what your life would be like without them. And sometimes I'll literally start crying in the middle of this practice. But then when you're done, it makes you call them, and you feel this overwhelming sense of hey, like, I have this person. They're healthy. I have love in my life. Nothing else matters. And then you go and you hug them or you call them and you share that. And it's just such a profound practice that if you really do it, it just helps you appreciate what you already have. And I think that's something that is not easy, especially in today's society where we're constantly being shown all these things that we want, or expectations, or even goals that we're striving for. But what both of these practices do, I think, is they help you become happier with what you already have. And if you can really do that, if you can become happy with what you already have, I think that is probably the most profound practice you can add into your life, is to just realize that you don't need anything else. You have everything you need. And to really cultivate these strong relationships. And in the event that somebody else does pass, if you live like this, you can know that you were more present in those moments that you shared with them. And when you tell people you love them more, then I think having strong relationships is just a win across the board. And I'm not sitting here saying I have the strongest, and I don't, but too much time passed before I reach out to someone. Not. This whole process of even recording this video is just reinforcing the importance of these exercises for me. Again, I don't apply these to 100% all the time, but I do think they're valuable. I will try. I recommend you trying them as well. They can be difficult, so if you're struggling, reach out to people you can trust and confide in them, and use your tribe to help you get through difficult times. And I hope that there's a way in which this can help you become happy with what you have in front of you. And I'll see you next time.